Before street ball had viral clips, before every ankle breaker became a 10-second highlight, before hoop mixtapes lived on phones, there was a brand that understood something the basketball establishment did not. Sometimes the most exciting game in the world was not under NBA lights. It was on cracked asphalt, inside crowded city gyms, at summer tournaments, with music blasting, crowds leaning over the baseline, and one defender praying he would not become famous for the wrong reason. That brand was And1. To understand its rise and fall, start with the name. In basketball, And1 is the moment a player scores through contact, hears the whistle, and gets a free throw with the bucket. It is a small phrase with attitude. It means you got hit and still finished. You were not stopped. That spirit became the identity of a company founded in 1993 by Seth Berger, J. Cohen Gilbert, and Tom Austin, three Wharton graduate students who saw a gap in basketball culture. Nike had superstars. Adidas had history. Reebok had its own lane. But the everyday hooper, the trash talker, the playground scorer, the kid who cared about the move as much as the final score, did not really have a brand speaking directly to them. And1 started with t-shirts sold out of the back of a car covered in bold basketball trash talk slogans. They were cocky, funny, and specific to hoopers. They sounded like something you would hear in a pickup game after somebody got crossed. That was the point. And one was not trying to be for everyone. It was for basketball, people who understood the language. That focus helped the brand grow fast. Foot Locker began carrying the shirts, and within a couple of years, And1 products were in stores across the United States. Then came sneakers, NBA talent, and the look of a real challenger in basketball footwear. Stephon Marbury became an early spokesman. Other NBA players followed. But the moment that truly changed everything did not begin in a boardroom. It began with a grainy videotape. In the mid-1990s, a tape featuring a Queens streetball guard named Rafer Alston made its way to And1. Alston's nickname was Skip to My Lou, and his game looked different from the polished basketball fans saw on national television. The footage was rough. The audio was hard to hear, but the handles were electric. Crossovers, hesitation moves, playground rhythm, and defenders frozen in place. It looked less like a workout and more like a secret language. For a while, that tape just sat around. Then And1 realized what it had. This was not just footage of a player. It was proof that basketball culture had another universe, one sneaker companies had barely touched. And1 edited the tape, copied it, and distributed it at camps, clinics, events, and through retail partnerships. When customers bought certain products, they could get the tape for free. That sounds simple now, but at the time it was revolutionary. And1 was using video as culture, not just advertising. The mixtape did not feel like a brand telling you what to buy. It felt like someone handing you forbidden basketball footage and saying, you need to see this. The skip tape became the first spark of the And1 mixtape era. Soon, the company built a movement around streetball highlights. It gathered legendary playground players, put them on tour, filmed their games, and turned those moments into mixtapes. Names like Hot Sauce, The Professor, Main Event, A.O., Half Man, Half Amazing, Spida, 50, and Skip to My Lou became famous far beyond their local courts. This was the genius of And1. It turned streetballers into characters, almost like superheroes. Each player had a name, a signature style, and a move fans tried to copy. The Professor was smaller, creative, and surgical with the dribble. Hot Sauce brought flash and misdirection. Main Event had power and personality. Half Man, Half Amazing lived above the rim. These were not just players, they were identities. The mixtape tour took that identity on the road. Starting with summer tours and expanding into the official And1 mixtape tour in 2002, the brand created a traveling basketball circus. Local players could show up to open runs and try to earn a spot. Crowds came for dunks, crossovers, alley-oops, no-look passes, and plays that made people jump out of their seats. The atmosphere was part game, part concert, part street festival. Then, ESPN brought the tour to television under the name Streetball, giving And1 an even bigger platform. For a generation of fans, this was must-watch content. It was basketball with personality turned all the way up. The court felt closer, the players felt accessible, the style felt rebellious. At the same time, And1 was still moving in the NBA. In 2000, Vince Carter won the slam dunk contest wearing the And1 Tai Chi, one of the era's most recognizable sneakers. Carter's performance was not just a win, it was a cultural explosion. His dunks became basketball mythology, and the Tai Chi was attached to one of the greatest dunk contest moments ever. By the early 2000s, And1 looked unstoppable. It had NBA visibility, streetball credibility, a growing global audience, and a media format ahead of its time. The company was not merely selling shoes. It was selling a feeling. Basketball belonged to whoever could create the most unforgettable moment. But the same qualities that made And1 explode also made it hard to sustain. Streetball is built on spontaneity. The mixtapes were exciting because they felt raw and unexpected. Once the format became a product, the brand had to keep producing bigger moves, louder crowds, and more spectacular highlights. Authentic culture is hard to repeat on schedule. There was also tension between streetball fame and traditional basketball credibility. And1 players were incredibly skilled, and many had serious backgrounds. Rafer Alston went from streetball legend to a long NBA career. But critics sometimes dismissed the tour as entertainment instead of real competition. That missed part of the point, but it still shaped how the brand was viewed. Then the business changed. In 2005, And1 was acquired by American Sporting Goods. Around that time, the founders moved away from the company. New ownership meant new priorities, and the original connection between the brand, the players, and the culture became harder to maintain. Many mixtape stars eventually left. The tour continued, but the feeling changed. What once seemed organic began to feel like a property being managed. At the same time, the world caught up. The internet made basketball highlights easy to find. You no longer needed a VHS tape or DVD to see an ankle breaker. YouTube, social media, and later Instagram and TikTok turned every hooper into a potential mixtape star. What And1 pioneered became normal. The format that made the brand special became the language of modern basketball media. Major sneaker companies also absorbed parts of And1's style. They learned to speak more directly to youth culture, street culture, and online highlight culture. The lane And1 created became crowded, and the company no longer had the same grip on the audience. The brand went through multiple ownership changes. It still existed, still sold shoes and apparel, and still made revival attempts, including reconnecting with former stars and celebrating anniversaries. But it never fully returned to the cultural center it occupied during the mixtape era. So was And1 a failure? Not really. If you judge it only by whether it became Nike, then yes, it fell short. But that was never the most interesting measure. And1's legacy is not just market share. Its legacy is influence. And1 proved basketball culture was bigger than professional leagues. It showed that a player could become famous through style, personality, and highlights, not only box scores. It helped turn handles into entertainment and the crossover into a shareable event. It gave playground legends a national and global stage. You can see its fingerprints everywhere now. Every viral hoop mixtape, every camera circling a defender after a nasty move, every crowd reaction clip, every young player building a following from park runs and training gyms owes something to the path And1 helped clear. The brand understood user-generated basketball culture before that phrase existed. It also changed how fans thought about creativity. Traditional basketball often asks, was it efficient? Streetball asks, did it make people feel something? And1 lived in that second question. The moves were not always the safest plays, but they were memorable. They made basketball feel like expression. That is why the nostalgia remains strong. For people who grew up in that era, And1 was more than a logo. It was the sound of a crowd reacting to a crossover. It was a DVD passed between friends. It was trying a move on the playground even though you had no business attempting it. It was the belief that somewhere, on some court, an unknown player could become a legend for one perfect moment. The rise of And1 was fast because it tapped into something real. The fall came because real culture is hard to own forever. Once the mixtape spirit escaped into the world, it no longer belonged to one company. And maybe that is the most And1 ending possible. The brand did not disappear. It became part of basketball's bloodstream.